Hello everybody and welcome back to Rebellious Menstruation. As you can see from the title of this video, this is the overview of Hannah pads. I have these 4 pads, and so this one here is a 8-inch panty liner in this Hannah blue pattern. I've just got these 10 inches in this Hannah pad green and this indigo antique, and I've also got this 14-inch. This pattern is called Edelweiss Ivory, which is the super ultra size. They are all made from organic cotton. If you have seen the March what I wore this month, I will link it up at the top so you can have a look. You will know that I wore this Edelweiss Ivory overnight, and with a pair of Love Lona. This went completely over the side, and for the first time in actually since I started wearing cloth pads, it went onto the sheets, soaked through 3 layers of bedding to the mattress, which is uber frustrating and just hasn't happened to me in forever. So it was completely uber frustrating, and I have white sheets on my bed at the moment because I don't go over my pads, and I don't go over or through the underwear either, and I haven't done in years, and it meant that I don't worry about white sheets anymore except this time. But this is actually a perfect example of what this type of backer will actually do. So you'll never actually bleed through a PUL backer. Essentially, you will go over the side. It will never go through this type of backer. It will just soak in and come over the side. Also, this shape, as you can tell, extends out from the back, so the extra layers are actually focused in this section of the pad. This actually means I will not be wearing this overnight again. These extra layers that are focused on the center and this inch around the side, and especially at the back, this backer actually finishes here, and it gives you this good inch before you actually get to the back of the pad. So if you're a back, if you bleed towards the back, there's going to be nothing here to absorb the liquid, and there is nothing here in the sides to absorb the liquid if this gets soaked. So if this core gets soaked, there's nothing really here outside of the top layer to actually absorb your menstrual flow, which is why it pushes out over the edge. And this is essentially what happened to me, is that this absorbent core, which is meant to be a super ultra, actually became too soaked and then just pushed all the blood over the edge onto my sheets and bed. This actually is the same with these ones, is that the center part has the core, and this only has the topper around the edge and the back and the top. This is why you do not bleed through the laminate. You will actually do what I did and bleed over the edge. As you can see, this is where the core is, and this is where the side is. These do not, these obviously, as you can also tell, predominantly would suit a black back beater or a front bleeder, depending on how you want to wear it. But because I'm a center bleeder here, what mainly happens is I do come off the side. It's kind of why I prefer my pads to be centered in general, and rather than having a big base or a big front, depending on which side you want to wear it again. Also on top of this here, if you can see, this staining is still here. It has been it won't leave. Like, it's getting super frustrating. I have soaked it along with all of my normal soaking I have stain treated it. I have done it in the sun. I have actually soaked it in the Hannah Pads stain remover, and I have used Vanish, and I have used Bossito's eucalyptus wash. I have used 3 different stain sticks on it, and it still won't be removed from this section. If you can see where that staining is, there are 2 bits, this bit here and this bit here, and there is a bit of staining on this one as well, and there is still a bit of staining on this one. So really none of the staining came out of these. This one doesn't really get that stained because I use it as a liner, which is kind of super frustrating because they were stain treated, soaked. They have now been soaked for about 42 hours and stain treated 3 times and washed 3 times and dried in the sun, and there is still distinct stains on obviously the surface of these pads. So this is the wet bag that obviously I have from Hannah Pads. I did use it on the last period, and I will be using it for the upcoming period as well. It's actually quite a cute bag. I thought the lack of the zipper would be frustrating. It is not. It just means that this can be left open and easily accessible from my desk drawer or from my backpack, and also it does kind of, you can actually kind of like fold it down to a much smaller section if you actually need to fit it into another bag. So it's actually much more flexible than a lot of the other wet bags that I have. So I actually kind of enjoyed using this. This has been the best thing I have from Hannah Pads so far. I did use their laundry detergent. I haven't actually used their laundry soap just yet. I did use their probiotic soap, which, if you remember, was this. To be honest, I didn't notice anything particularly positive or negative about it. It was just laundry powder. So I don't know if probiotic is necessarily essential to be used, but it wasn't. It went into the wash, it cleaned the clothes fine. It wasn't something that was particularly positive or negative at this point. It didn't particularly leave a scent, but that's a good thing. We don't particularly want overly scented wash. So I haven't actually used the laundry soap yet, but I will get to it. Obviously I've got another, because this is the March update or review, and I will be doing one for April and one for May. So this will be the update that I will be doing. So I'll be using this in the next 2 months to actually give you a review. I did use the laundry soaker, but obviously it did not actually remove the laundry stain remover, but it did not actually remove the stains from its own branded pads. So at this point I will have to try it again to see how we go. So this is the March update. I'll see you in the next update. This is the April review of Hannah Pads. I wore this 10-inch Hannah Green Hannah Pad on Wednesday the 14th of April 2020, and I didn't actually wear any of the others. This 10-inch Antique Indigo I did carry with me as my backup, and it was, you probably would have seen it if you follow me on Instagram, that this was in my backup for in case I needed it. But generally I take 5 pads with me when I leave the house or for my work day, and generally I will wear 4, and then by the time I get home, which is when I would put on the 5th pad, I then obviously have access to all of the rest of my pads, because you never know what's going to happen. So my period kind of ended before I ended up using any of these. Generally, even though this one's a panty liner and this one's a small, these are both kind of too small for me to be wearing on my period. So I wouldn't necessarily where either one of these even is back up. So most likely these two will end up destashed, to be quite frank. But I did wear this one. Look, there is nothing particularly wrong with these pads. They just don't necessarily suit my preferences. Aside from the two 10-inch ones here that are actually in my size preference for pads, the 8-inch liners, it's just... I already told you, obviously, in the last update, which you would have seen just before this one, that this 13-inch super heavy one I had issues with in my last period. So, alas, look, it's obviously kind of possibly tainted my experience. The experience I had with Hannah pads in January 2019 was kind of similar to this. I went over the edges, they didn't necessarily fit the underwear that I wore right, and this is why sometimes it's kind of hard to review things when they don't work for you, because just because they don't work for me does not mean they're not going to work for everybody else. And I've noticed that probably because of the underwear that I use, the shape that I am, the size that I am, there are just certain pads that I have preference for that other people do not have preference for. There are certain pads that I have not liked and I have destashed to my sister, and they're her favourite pads because they suit her shape. Like these, she's always like, these ones are my favourite ones, blah, blah, blah. And it's just because they suit her body shape and underwear better than they suited me. And I think that's what's happening with these Hannah pad ones, is that they are very well made. They are well presented, they are well packaged, they have a good company ethos, and they own the factories that these are made in. Their companies are franchises, so the Australia company is a franchise of the South Korean one. There's an American franchise. There is a European franchise. I actually love everything about this company except for the pads. And this is obviously organic cotton that they use for their pads. Some of them actually do come with kind of seeds in them because they don't believe in processing them too much. None of these ones have that. Sorry about that. These silicone dots on the back work exactly as intended to prevent them from moving around your underwear, which seems to be part of the criticism originally. But like this shape here, if you see, this doesn't, because if you've seen some of my other vlogs, I quite often bleed out here. So this doesn't have enough front coverage for me. And even if I turn it around here, so I quite often will bleed from here to here if I'm heavy. So it doesn't matter which way I wear this pad, it's not going to be adequate enough if I have this bit at the front or the back. As I said, these ones are a bit small, and so instead of, like as I said, these silicone dots do exactly what they're meant to do in preventing them from moving around your underwear. But again, I prefer corduroy as a backer, and corduroy does exactly the same thing. So again, what it falls down to essentially at this point is probably just personal preference, is that these are not in my personal preference. This does not mean these are bad pads. These are very well made. These are very nice pads, and it's a great company. This is, to be honest with you, I was a bit dubious about the lack of zipper on top. I found that this is a great wet bag, and having just this rope here makes it a lot easier to kind of get in and out of. It doesn't open. Even when I haven't actually pulled this closed, I haven't had anything come out of it. So I've just kind of propped it up in my bag, and it's worked perfectly fine. So even with the slight bit, like the slight bit on the bottom, like that, it will sit up. So that doesn't ever seem to be a problem in general. So it will sit up even without this closed, and if you have it sitting up in your handbag or your backpack like I do, nothing falls out of it anyway. So I am a big fan of this wet bag. So I'll see you guys in the next update. Hello everybody, this is the May update for Hannah pads. I didn't end up using, if you see my prep pack, I think I used the wet bag in my prep pack, but then when I ended up with my cycle, I didn't end up using any bag. I just used the little pad wrappers from Gypsy Heart Store. I have, so these are the 8-inch panty liner and small. This is in this puppy print. So it has a bunch of puppies on it, and this is in the Hannah blue print, which has some dancing ladies on it. I've been wearing both of these as liners. Essentially the difference is that the panty liner has one center piece, and the small, is it small? Yep, they call it small, has two pieces in the middle, as you may be able to see here. But outside of this, these pretty well much, due to their size, go in the liner section, and I treat them both as liners and wear them as such. I've worn these, I think, at least once throughout the month. No particular issues. Both of them have slight stainings on them. That one there, and this one. Oh, I don't know why this has so much fluff everywhere. And this one here. But outside of that, they function as liners. They are 8 inches. You know, I haven't had any massive issues with them at all. This one's not clipping now, of course it's not, because I'm filming. And of course these have these little silicone grip dots on them when it focuses, as you can see there. So these are the little silicone grip dots that are meant to keep them in place on your underwear rather than slipping all over the place, because when you back pads in, like this is the difference. So these are the 10-inch ones, and I wore them both, but if you look at them both, this one has the silicone dots, this had a green one, and this one does not. This is the antique indigo print, and you can tell that this one is very smooth and it slips around. So essentially what happens is this one slips around all the way through your underwear, which is why when you have P-Well, or in Hannah Pads' case, TPU backed pads, is that they tend to be slippery on your underwear. I prefer to buy corduroy backed pads, because corduroy backed pads don't slip around on your underwear, and are essentially effective at doing that. Hannah Pads, instead of changing the fabric, went with these little silicone dots. The silicone dots do not extend beyond, I think, this size. They're only available in 3 sizes, which is the liner and small size, which are what these ones are, the medium size, which is what I think these are, and one more size. So I'm pretty sure they're only available in 3 sizes. Again, both of these have essentially, both of these are the same. This one feels thinner, but they're both the same style in having 2 sets of liners here. And again, this is all organic cotton, topped organic lined, organic cotton lined, and then the Hannah Pads TPU on the back of these, which is kind of a laminated organic cotton. They're 10 inches. They both come up pretty clean in the wash. Essentially kind of the difference in these ones to these ones is these tend to be worn when I have my period and therefore I'm bleeding, and they tend to get soaked in oxygen bleach or on oxy. These ones here don't ever tend to get soaked. They tend just to get rinsed out and then thrown through the wash. I have actually been using the probiotic soap that I got with this pack. What I'll do is I'll link the unboxing of the Hannah Pads up on screen somewhere so that you can go and see what I'm talking about. But in the next update, I will actually go over the probiotic soap and the Tough Stuff soap that I got. But yeah, so these were soaked and they've come up pretty clean. I think that was one of my complaints in the last update, was that they didn't come up as clean as I had hoped and that they had stained. But this seems to have worked. Again, they are quite comfortable and to wear, but they're just really generic, really. They don't come with, as you can see, kind of by when, I'm going to lift you up a bit. When you actually deal, there's nothing too innovative about these pads. They're quite bland in the way that they look. They're bland in the way, they're all, the good thing about that is they're very, very consistent in their shape, style, and presentation. The kind of bad thing about that is that they're consistent in their shape, styling, and presentation. There's nothing that really kind of goes outside of that. So that's the Hannah Pad Moderates, which is the green, Hannah Green, and the Antique Indigo, which are these four. And then I also wore this on my first overnight, which is the 14 inch, and this is the Idleweiss ivory print. There we go. Again, this is 3 layers, which is, so there's this layer, and then, so again, this is basically my problem with this size. We're going to just move these up a bit. Is that I am very much a center bleeder, and then it tends to kind of go this way, and so I tend to kind of go out here if I'm going to go anywhere. This provides quite a significant bit of space here, which you can obviously put at the back or at the front, depending on where you want to wear this section. But for me, I don't need this to be massively at the back or massively at the front. I need this to be evenly distributed around on the pad. So it would be much more, it is much more convenient for me to have this part in the middle and an equal distribution of the pad here and here. These aren't equally distributed. These are essentially back bleeder or front bleeder pads, which can be super frustrating for somebody like me. They're also, they do not give much front coverage at all. In a pad that is this size, this 10 inch, you do not notice as much. You do not notice that there is not a lot of front coverage. As you can see, this front coverage here is smaller than this front coverage, or maybe you can't because it's not very close for you. But as you can see, is the top and the bottom section is smaller. So this section here is smaller than this section here. So when you're looking at this, this is smaller than this. So there is an uneven distribution of where this is. where the layers are. For this size, for this 10-inch size, it's not that big a deal because it's not a very large pad. On this, it is much more obvious that this is where the layers are and there's nothing here. For me, when I'm wearing these pads, I go off here really, really easy. I just go, it just goes straight off. But if I wear it the other way around and have this at the back, I then end up coming off the back as well. So this is just not in the right centered. It's not centered as well for me. But I did end up wearing this. It is still slightly stained, if you can see, if it focuses, but it's actually come up a lot cleaner than it did last time I washed it. But it is this type of organic cotton, and it's probably going to be, it's unbleached organic cotton, and it's going to be probably more likely to stain a little bit or to discolor easier than a lot of my other highly colored pads. So it's not that big a deal. So this is probably for me the worst example of Hannah pads. It's still they're still very, very well made, and they're very, very well, you know, the patterns are still kind of cute, but as a function, I think this is a super ultra. So this is the super ultra. So it's 98%. Oh, sorry, I wasn't even. So it's a super ultra, which is 98% cotton and 2% TPU. But again, the larger Hannah pads get, the worse the shape suits me. So probably this 10-inch is probably the largest that I could go in Hannah pads for it to work for me. Outside of that, that is the June update for Hannah pads. I'll probably test them out one more month, which means probably in June you're going to get 3 or 4 reviews, 2 or 3 reviews all at once, but that's okay. That's half the fun of all of this. So I'll see you in the June update. Okay, this will be the last update of the Hannah pads review. This last June period, I essentially used these 5 in the middle for my cycle. If you've seen the what I wore this month for June, May and April, you would have seen these in the mix of the what I wore this month. So what I have here from the Hannah pads is 2 8-inches. One's a panty liner, one is I think a small in Hannah blue and in the puppies print. These two both have the silicone dots on them to prevent slippage. This one is one of their older prints from I think 18 months ago, and this doesn't have the silicone dots on it. These 4 here are 10 inches, and this is the Antique Indigo, the Hannah Green, and these 2 are Carnation Black. These 3 have the silicone dots on it. This is the 12-inch Morning Glory, and this is the 13.5 Edelweiss Ivory, which is a discontinued print now, I believe, because obviously they only have a certain amount of prints available on offer at any one time. So the 8 and 10 inches now have silicone dots for anti-slippage, but the bigger ones don't. So essentially, these are the Hannah pads. They used to have a different design for their wet bags, and now they have gone with this design to stop actually having a zipper on the top. So I've got this design, I've got a Curious Cats design. You can also get this Curious Cats design on the back of your pads, and in this like native print design as well. So the initial problem that I had with these probably 2.5 years ago was like with this antique indigo print here, was that they were very slippy and were very all over the place. And of course the problem with that is because essentially these are backed in like a laminated cotton, which Hannah Pad's called TPU, and the problem with that is just like it's just like being backed in plastic essentially, is that it's very, very slippy, and it's just like I don't like PUL backed pads for the same reason. They're very slippy in the way that they move on your pads. So PUL as an internal coil works, but PUL as a backer does not work. I destashed quite a few of my initial purchases from 2.5-3 years ago that were PUL backed because I didn't like how they functioned. And this was kind of the initial problem with Hannah Pads, is that because they're TPU backed or laminated, essentially laminated cotton packed, is that they can be very, very slippy. Obviously this was a problem for quite a few people who used Hannah Pads, and they introduced this silicone dot section. The silicone dots do actually help with not moving them around so much, which is becomes very, very useful. However, the other problem, which you would have seen already in the updates that have come through, is that when I wore this 13.5 inch Edelweiss Ivory, because it is this backed in laminated cotton, essentially your blood won't go through it. So what happened to me is that I went essentially over the side of it. That's probably my other, and that will happen with TPU pads as well, is that you won't go through it, you'll go over it. This is also a representation of what my problem is when you get to the bigger sizes of Hannah Pads, is that, as you can see, this is the center bit of the pad, and they just go up from here there. So this is the thickest part of the pad, but if you're a center bleeder like me, what works with this 10-inch pad. So as you can see with this 10-inch pad, the center's got the most amount of coverage, and then it goes out. Okay, so the wings don't have any coverage on them, and you have a marginal kind of 1/2 inch section on the back where there's no core at all. But generally, as a center bleeder, this is kind of where I go. So on a 10-inch pad, that actually works perfectly well. But as you can see, once you get up to the 12-inch and then get up to the 13.5 inch, the distribution of the core remains in this center passage, but not at the back or not at the sides. So as a kind of a consequence, this is where I had the problem last time, is I didn't actually, I'm just going to clip this up so it actually shows you a bit more clearly without the wings in the way, is I actually bled off this top up here. I went straight off this side here, because where the coverage is on these pads, as you can see, is here. So the bigger you get, this is where the coverage is. This is where the coverage is. This is where the coverage is. But for me, when I need a heavy, I need the coverage out here as well. So I need the coverage to be here. So this is where I need the coverage, but they've actually put the coverage down here. So really, if I needed a 13.5 inch, I would really need this to be the flare. And unfortunately, the way they've gone with these pads is just to increase them at the back end rather than increase them anywhere else. Also, as you can see when they're all clipped up, is that these ones have a pretty consistent standard shape here. This one here curves remarkably in at the end. So even if I put this one over the top of, you can see that there is almost a ½ an inch difference in the way that they are here. So this one here, when you're wearing it, has a significant section to the side, whereas this one cascades very much in to the core. So it actually means, as you can see there as well, that these two are pretty standard shaped at the top, but the bigger that Hannah Pads makes their pads, the more it goes to the back and not to this center. So this 10 inch and 12 inch are actually work perfectly fine with my center bleeding. These this 13 inch is not very functional, so I do kind of wish that their design stayed with this center and kind of ended up with this rather than with the design that they went with. Having said this, if you are a significant front or back bleeder, you can turn this to whichever way that you need, but for center bleeding it's just not going to work as well in the long run. Okay, so outside of that, that was probably my bigger bugbear with the bigger sizes, but because these are center bleedy pads, up until this about 12 inches is probably the maximum I can go, and with these 10 inches ones, because the loading is in the center, it does actually function very well for me. These cleaning products are very, very good. I did like them, but they're in very, very tiny jars. This probiotic soap, which it looks like here, is actually very, very good. I rinse out my pads and use this on them, and then I use this stain cleaner. This Tasmanian stain cleaner is significantly good, and I definitely recommend this Tasmanian soap company, Tough Stuff. So if you can get a hold of this, definitely give it a go. This probiotic soap is pretty good. And this is probably my biggest bugbear with this stain remover, is that it is relatively expensive for such a small jar Outside of that, I actually like this. I did enjoy using it, and I would definitely recommend you get it again. So these are definitely recommended. I do love the drawstring pouch. It works really, really well. They're easy to access. They're very well done. That's why I have 3 of them now. One of them will probably end up with my sister, depending on which design that she would like, and I'll keep 2, but outside of that, these are definitely worth it for getting. So that is the end of my Hannah Pad review. Hopefully this helps you all out. Their website will be linked down below. They do have franchises around the world, so there'll be one close to you. There's a US franchise, there's a couple in Europe, and there's one in Australia and New Zealand. So hopefully this helps you all out, and enjoy. Thanks for watching. This is probably a horrendously long review again. Enjoy your morning, afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the day, and I of course will catch up with you all in the next video. Bye everyone.